Our second reader this evening is Kelly Luce. Kelly Luce is, as far as I know, the only author we've ever brought for Functionally Literate who has done time in a Japanese prison. I don't mean to make light of the experience. It's genuinely terrifying to see the hands of a different justice system moving in her recent piece for New York Magazine, Truth, Lies, and Videotape in the Kawasaki Kmart, which describes the experience of being jailed for a crime she did not commit. I do think this milestone, though, is worth mentioning. Many people in Orlando who already know Kelly Luce will remember her as a Kerouac Project resident in 2010. I regret that I am not one of those people who knew Kelly when she was at the K House. Despite her time here, I never knew a thing about her work until I was gazing at a table of books at the A Strange Object booth at AWP a few years ago and saw a collection whose title immediately snared my attention. 3 Scenarios in Which Hana Sasaki Grows a Tail. Honestly, I would have been happy to know about 1 scenario in which Hana Sasaki grows a tail, but 3 demanded my immediate attention. I purchased and read the book quickly and found inside a sensitive, gorgeous prose in a ghostly Japanese landscape that rivals or perhaps surpasses that of Haruki Murakami. Yes, I know that's not an original comparison, but for me, as a fan, it's an inescapable one. Kelly's work has been recognized by fellowships from the MacDowell Colony, UCross Foundation, Sozopol Fiction Seminars, Ragdoll Foundation, and the Kerouac Project, and the Gentile Arts, and it's appeared in the Chicago Tribune, Salon, O, the Oprah Magazine, the Southern Review, and other publications. Her debut novel, Pull Me Under, demands to be read immediately. Kelly's work is imaginative, powerful, and unafraid of showing the soul of its characters. It is a distinct pleasure to bring one of my favorite authors here to read for you. Please join me in welcoming Kelly Luce.
Here we go. How's that? Oh, yeah. Okay, wow. Jared, thank you. And Ryan, also thank you for both bringing me here back to Orlando, which is a very special place for me. I spent 3 months in the K House just over in College Park working hard on this book, and it's in the acknowledgments for a reason. It was formative to writing this book, so it's very special to be back in Orlando. I also want to thank everyone who came out tonight. It's a crazy day for our country. And everyone who's here believes in art and writing, literature, the power of fiction to cross borders, increase empathy and compassion. So I really thank you all for being out here. And anyone who's at the rally today, you can see my tan lines, sunburn lines. I was there too. Thanks. So this novel is set in Japan. It's from the point of view of a woman who, as a child, murdered her school bully. She's a Japanese-American hafu, mixed-race girl in Japan, and she grows up and basically starts a new life in America and tells no one of her past. She marries an American guy and has a daughter and becomes a nurse, and so she has this dark secret that she's committed this crime as a child in Japan. And for the most part, the novel is from her first-person point of view, but the beginning, you get a couple little different tastes of different things. So I'll start with the very first thing you see in the book, which is actually an excerpt from a fictional Japanese English language magazine called Kyoto Wow! Exclamation point. Dated October 14th, 1988. On a cloudless afternoon in the peaceful Shikoku city of Tokushima, 12-year-old Chizuru Akitani, Japanese-American daughter of acclaimed violinist and living national treasure Hiro Akitani, walked into the staff room at Motomachi Elementary, covered with blood and clutching a letter opener. Panic swept the room as people assumed the sixth grader, known for her introspective nature, had seriously hurt herself. The English teacher, Miss Daniela Townsend, was the first to approach Chizuru. As she neared, the girl raised her palm and stilled the room with 5 words. "This is not my blood." So, after that, Chizuru is put into a juvenile detention center in Japan. And I'll read a couple pages in the past tense just about her reminiscing about that time, so you get a little sense of what it was like for her as a preteen and then teen. Kawano Juvenile Recovery Center occupied a compound originally built to house orphaned A-bomb survivors. It was turned into a detention center for juvenile delinquents during the 70s. Some kids claimed the bomb survivors had brought radiation with them and infected the place, that no one could recover there, but for me, it became home. I was 12 when I arrived, and I didn't leave until my 20th birthday. Those first days did feel like the aftermath of an explosion. I both did and did not know why I'd been sent there. The shock of what had happened, what I'd done, kept my mind cloudy, my memories watered down. I met twice daily with Dr. Kankan, a white-crested psychiatrist fond of naval metaphors. Dr. K told me I had hurt someone, but he would not elaborate. I wanted to know who. Was it someone in my family? A stranger? I worried about my parents. "We'll discuss that when you're anchored," was his unchanging answer. But other patients, inmates we called ourselves, managed to learn what had happened. There were no secrets at Kawano. It didn't matter that we weren't allowed to read the juicy parts of the newspaper or that back then the world was internetless. Knowledge seeped in anyway. "I killed a kid at my school," a boy whispered to me in the cafeteria. "Stabbed him to death." Did I feel like a murderer? I didn't know how to answer. I knew what he said was true, but I also didn't know what feeling like a murderer meant. Still, if I'd killed someone, shouldn't I know? I noticed at a young age, 4 years old or 5, a dark presence in my chest, a blackness clinging to the back of my heart. Mostly the thing lay dormant and I could put it out of my mind, but occasionally it swelled like an infected gland. These were the times I felt hurt or angry, the sensations so closely linked that I never separated them until a therapist pointed out the difference. My anger was an organ. I feared this black organ. It was responsible for the evil thoughts I had, the visions of hurting the person who hurt me, Tomoya Yu, his taunts of fatty potato ringing in my ears. And those visions had come true. I was not in control of my body. The kids didn't make fun of my weight at Kawano. Relatively little teasing happened there. Instead of insults, we gave each other practical nicknames, and my extra flab paled in comparison with other personal details. They called me Sutabi Gyaru, stabby girl, or Kireru, the term the doctors threw around in their hushed conversations. It meant to split or snap, like a wishbone or a rubber band stretched too far. Before I left Kawano 8 years later, 7 more Kireru kids would come. 3 girls, 4 boys, each in their early teens. All killers, with the exception of one girl who'd pushed a handicapped boy off a roof, but only, her word, succeeded in paralyzing him. Dr. K carried a yellow notepad in his coat pocket and pulled it out often. He said it was good I had some time away. I was allowed no visitors for 6 months, not even family. Your subconscious needs to be bailed out, he said. I'm going to skip ahead now. Another thing you should know for the next section is that Chizuru's father is her Japanese parent. He is a virtuoso violinist, and so he performs all over the world. Not a model father, a little bit self-centered, and so the bulk of the book is from her point of view. She has grown up, she's in her mid-30s, and now lives in Boulder, Colorado, where she went to college, married and has a daughter and has become a nurse. And she has been estranged from her father for about 20 years. And that's kind of where this many pages into the book, we kind of start our present tense story with this news. The news of my father's second and final death arrives by FedEx. I push open the front door and the smell of Sal's garlic marinara hits me in the face. "That smells amazing," I call as I kick off my shoes in the entryway. I'm lucky. My husband gets off work by 4 o'clock every day, and he likes to cook. Sal sticks his head out of the kitchen and waves, a wooden spoon in his mouth. His dark hair is covered by a blue bandana. Lily sits on the couch with her skinny legs tucked to her chest, arms folded around her knees. My origami daughter. A long rectangular box lies between her and the curled-up cat. As he's aged, Bagel's fur has turned dark brown in spots, causing him to look more like a cinnamon roll every year. He flutters his eyes and goes back to sleep, unimpressed by my return. "From Japan," Lily says, freeing her hands and picking up the box. She shakes it the way we do at Christmas and birthdays. Papers and something long, like a ginormous chopstick. Dad wouldn't let me open it. What'd you order? My appetite disappears like it's been vacuumed out. I sit next to Lily, kiss the top of her peach-scented head. She nuzzles my shoulder. She is 11, no longer a baby, but not yet a young woman, and there's no middle ground between the two. Being 11 means jumping from one state to the other at random. Some days or moments, we encounter the curious, loving child, others the surly, apathetic preteen. I take the box from her and for the first time find myself wishing for one of her apathetic days. Red and green labels partially obscure the FedEx logo. The return address is in Japanese. On the packing slip, our address and Rio Silvestri appear in block print. I stand focusing on my name, the markered strokes of which seem to sharpen and rise off the surface of the box. This can't be right. I left Japan as Chizuru Akitani. As far as anyone in Japan should know, that is still my name. Chizuru gave up her Japanese citizenship. Rio Silvestri is the new me, the American. That's how it works. No one in America knows about Chizuru. No one in Japan knows about Rio. "Where are you going?" Lily asks. I've crossed the room to the stairs that lead to our bedrooms. I take the steps 2 at a time, the box clutched in one hand. Lily yells, "Open it here, I want to see." I stop and give her a look. It's addressed to me. She's about to whine, then her face goes stony. "Lame," she declares, a word she knows I despise. She turns the television on. "Hey," Sal calls from the kitchen. "Remember what we said about attitude?" Lily keeps her eyes on the screen, feigning interest in a commercial for male body wash. Normally, I'd ask her to acknowledge us like the parenting books advise, but I can't do it. I can't do anything until I know what I'm holding. I speed walk down the hall to our bedroom. Maybe it's age, maybe it's something else, but I'm not as excitable as I once was. The black organ, soothed into submission by my running, retreated even further once Lily was born. It's still there, though, and I sense it now, just behind my heart. Sal avoids triggering it, either instinctively or by luck, but Lily's the opposite. She knows exactly how to piss me off. She also knows that if I have to leave the room while we're arguing, she's won. I'm happy to give her those victories. She will never see her mother out of control. Downstairs, Sal says something to Lily that I can't hear. Then he calls, "You stockpiling ninja stars, Ree? I had to sign in 3 places before the guy would hand that thing over." Sal doesn't know all of me. Maybe this is true of all husbands and wives. Surely there are inaccessible places in each of us. Places few would understand, and marriage, I've come to believe, is about finding someone who understands the right things without digging up the wrong ones. I've kept the promise I made to myself. Sal has never heard of Chizuru Akitani, the girl who snapped. I lock the door and grab Sal's beard-trimming scissors from the mug on our dresser. The lightest pressure splits the brown tape sealing the box. Sal sharpens these scissors along with the kitchen knives every 6th Sunday. He draws a pointy blade on his calendar to mark the dates. A lawyer gives assurance in clumsy English. Mr. Akitani's suffrage was not lengthy. He died in peace. That it happened quickly. The lawyer manages to get the medical vocabulary right. Cardiac arrest. I push out a long breath and sink onto the bed. I'm not in trouble. My father died, that's all. I set the letter aside and from the box pick up a 10,000 yen note folded into a butterfly. I'm surprised he's hung on to it after all these years. I lift the butterfly's wings and let them settle back into place. Hiro Akitani didn't trust banks. This peculiarity, combined with his absent-mindedness, meant money all over the house. Once, as a kid, I opened my origami box to find a stack of flat, smooth bills. I folded them into swans and placed them in the low alcove in the living room reserved for sacred objects. For weeks, no one noticed the equivalent of $3,000 sitting in plain sight. When our living national treasure, in private, my mom and I often referred to him using this preposterous title, which we knew he was secretly proud of, was in a good mood, he might hand me a wad pulled from a sack of rice or the shoe cabinet and say, "Look at this, a kid who's entertained by money without spending it." Of course, when I was older, desirous of comic books and gadgets, he never gave me enough to buy more than a sticky bun. I put the butterfly on top of the lawyer's letter and turned back to the box. Dividing it diagonally is the object Lily called a chopstick, my father's violin bow. I run a finger along the smooth Pernambuco wood. During the periods he was home with us in Tokushima, on break from the orchestra in Tokyo, cleaning the bow was my weekly chore. I'd spend an hour, far more time than necessary, coaxing rosin from between the strands of Mongolian horsetail, polishing the pad and the stick. He never said a word when I gave it back, spotless. As his trips grew longer and more frequent, and he began spending full weeks at the Tokyo apartment, I'd sometimes leave a little bit of wax on purpose to provoke an interaction. He got mad at my mom all the time, called his American wife my Western demon. But I had to work to get under his skin. If only I could raise his passion the way my mother did. Measured against ambivalence, rage seemed a gift. What's he done with the violin? It doesn't seem right to separate the bow from its instrument. In New York City, during my second and last childhood trip to the United States, I heard a fat man in a tux refer to my father as a super auditor, like a chef whose sense of taste is so refined he can detect a dash of paprika in a gallon pot. And it was true. Our living national treasure, or more officially, Juyo Muke Bunkazai Hojisha, preserver of important intangible cultural properties, was ultra-sensitive to sound and heard music in the strangest places. The truck that collected burnable trash on its Thursday dawn rounds, but not the non-burnables truck on Fridays. He heard a backbeat as my mother washed dishes. But he was equally sensitive to that which did not resonate, what he called sazameki, the din. The sound of my pen across a page sent him out of the room, but when my mom wrote, he relaxed. He assigned people musical intervals. Whenever I succeeded in irritating him, he whistled mine, the tritone, or devil's interval, that sonic argument one heard from an ambulance. The space between those notes, he said, had driven men to fight, to ravage, to kill. Mine was the interval that could start a war. There's a sheet of notebook paper at the bottom of the box. Japanese writing covers the page. It's my father's tiny, precise lettering. Thanks to YouTube, I know I can still understand spoken Japanese pretty well, but my ability to read kanji is gone. Even the 3rd grade level I left Kawano with has likely deteriorated from lack of use. I stare at the page, willing the language to let me in. What is he trying to tell me? I have no idea how he spent the last 20 years. I scan the letter but can only pick out a few characters. There are 10 and tree, and the one for west that looks like a bottle, and the name of our prefecture, Tokushima, and the crossed pitchfork, shi, that means city. My father's voice echoes in my head. You are Japanese. You must learn to read and write kanji like a Japanese, not carelessly like your mother. Even in death, the man finds a way to point out my deficiencies. I can't read his message, but really it doesn't matter what the letter says. Even if it's a reproach, he reached out, said something. Bow, butterfly, letter. This, according to the lawyer, is my inheritance. I can touch these objects, smell them, throw them at the wall. These things handed down have weight and shape, fragility. My knee can crack this bow, the money will burn, and so will the paper. A state ceremony honoring my father will be held in Tokyo tomorrow. A more intimate funeral service and celebration of life, organized by his friend Leonardo Verruti, will be held in a week in a small city on Shikoku where I grew up, allowing mourners outside Japan time to make travel arrangements. The details of time and place are included along with a map of Tokushima Prefecture. I stare at the lines that represent roads and highways of my childhood, but cannot connect them to my first home, just as I cannot make meaning out of my father's note. I've accomplished the goal that drove me for years, leaving that life behind. But I don't feel proud. In our Pier 1 bedroom, surrounded by proof of my success, I feel like someone's pointed out a hole in my favorite sweater. I feel like what I am, a 38-year-old mother and wife with a retirement fund and a house in the suburbs and a Volvo. My life has been built for safety. But it has to be like this. I know how it feels to be left, to be thought worse than worthless. No one I love will ever feel that way. I think I'll stop there. Thanks.